Hello, welcome back to YCFT. This is part 2 of our dive into the world of Stephen King's It.
Yes.
We're talking about the second half. Well, for starters, if you haven't, we're not going to retread over a lot of stuff from our first video. So if you haven't watched it yet, go back and watch that.
Mm-hmm.
We're very proud of it. We are talking about the second part of the 1990s miniseries and itchaptertwo from 2019. So the adult side of the story. 27 years has gone by after the Losers Club defeated it and it was forced to go into an early slumber. It's
an early hibernation.
Hibernation. They've all went off to do various things.
They have.
They're all fairly successful, but none of them are really happy.
No.
Mike stays in the town as the town's librarian to keep an eye on things. Bill goes off to become an author.
It's a very successful horror novelist.
Yeah, Ben is an architect.
He is.
Richie he's a comedian.
Stand-up comedian.
In the book, he's a radio DJ.
Yeah.
But in both other adaptations, he's been a comedian.
He's a comedian, which I think works better.
Eddie, he runs a limo company or luxury car company.
Yeah, that's how it is in the book and the miniseries.
In this, he's a risk assessor.
Yeah.
I personally think
suits him.
Suits him. Stanley is. I don't know what Stanley does.
He's an accountant.
He's an accountant. He seems the happiest.
Yeah.
Beverly is she works in fashion.
She's a fashion designer.
Yeah. Have I got all of them? I think I've got them all.
I think so.
Yeah.
None
of them can remember. Kind of like I said after you read the book, Derry has this effect on you where you kind of forget about it all. Yeah. Like, none of them remember
the events.
Like we can't physically remember the entirety of the book because the book doesn't allow you to. It's over 1,000 pages.
It's 1,000 pages, okay?
But none of them can. They're aware that they grew up in Derry, but they can't remember it.
Yeah, I think it's a mix of supernatural things making that happen, but also just playing into trauma. Your brain literally makes you forget.
Yeah, killings start up again.
Yep.
In the miniseries, it is a young girl.
It is.
Who's riding a bike through the streets, and it's a really cool scene of Tim Curry's Pennywise in the sheets.
In the laundry. Yeah.
Again, as was common in the 19s, the kills were off-screen.
Off-screen kill.
In this is one of the strongest scenes in the 2019 one. It's a homophobic attack.
It is.
On a gay couple.
Yeah.
And again, wish it wasn't something that works today, but it's very prevalent still.
It is. It's a hard watch.
It's a hard watch, but it's a fantastic scene.
It is.
It's a great, the horror in that scene doesn't really come from Pennywise.
No.
It comes from, again, maybe that's the overall themes of the second half of the book.
I think you can argue it's a theme of the book overall. Who are the real monsters?
But after he's been beaten up and thrown over the bridge.
Yeah.
When you see Pennywise's silhouette at the edge, the edge of the river, just with his eyes just glowing.
The deadlights.
That is horrifying. It's hundreds and hundreds of balloons.
Standing on the riverbank, just willing this poor guy to safety.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
creepy as hell.
Yeah, love it. It's fantastic.
It is.
Horrifying for many reasons, including real-world implications.
Yeah.
But it's a great reintroduction to this character.
It is. It really, really is.
So Mike calls them back.
He gets all of the losers back to Derry.
He calls them all.
And as soon as he does, memories start coming back.
Yeah.
That fear resurges.
Yeah. Kind of, we have to talk about what happens.
Yes.
Obviously, Stanley, after getting the call, the thought of going back
is too much.
And he kills himself.
He kills himself in the bathtub.
In the bath.
Yeah.
We talked briefly in the first video about this. The miniseries did this much better in the first part.
I think they handled it much better.
And because we have that disconnect, they filmed these two. They didn't film them back to back, so we're basically meeting these adult characters for the first time.
Yes.
Because we watched them a day after the other, so to me is that this is Stan. But I remember seeing it in the cinema. I've been waiting 2 years for it, and I was like, I don't care about this character.
I think it's a mix to do with the fact that these are just fresh new actors who we don't have a connection with yet. They are individually, I think they are brilliant choices. And some of them actually were the kids' choices.
There's kids that,
Yeah. So I think individually they work. But again, chapter 2 for both parts. It's plagued with the fact that there's so much going on. It deals with a lot of stuff. They've only got a certain runtime that they have to cram everything into.
You can't
So we can't dwell on this scene as much as I think we need to.
Yeah. But I think later on in 2019, they kind of ruin it a bit by having Stan leave them a note.
Yeah.
And there's things like, he killed himself in order as a way to bring them all together. I think that takes away from the effects of what happened in their childhood had on him.
It kind of implies he didn't do it out of fear.
Yeah, but it's like, you still left your wife.
Move. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it feels like...
It has implications.
An afterthought. Yeah. So they do make it all back.
They do come back.
They do have to spend some time to remember the town and why they're there.
Well, then we get that scene in the restaurant, the Chinese restaurant.
In both of them, both incarnations. I actually think it is better in the 90s one.
Do you?
Yeah, there's just something like... They feel... Again, I think it's because in the part one we'd seen the adults before.
Yeah.
They felt like they just fell into being the kids.
You know, it's... And
we get a bit of that in 2019, but as an audience member, I'm looking at strangers that I need to get to know.
Yeah. I think, for some reason, this scene, Jade, the Orient, I think the restaurant's called, in both adaptations, I find it really, really corny, and I don't know why.
It's corny in the book.
It's corny in the book, but I think it works in the book. It's like in the miniseries, they all come, and it's all like very sweet, you know, they're reintroducing themselves to each other. But then you have that weird... like montage scene of when they're all around the table and you can't hear the conversation because there's like this really happy song that's playing over them, and they're all just like, whenever the food comes to the table, I don't know, I just find it kind of cheesy, but it's necessary. It's a scene that
it makes himself known to them at the end of it.
It does in the fortune cookies. Bad fortunes all round.
And it's like, even though, again, great VFX, the VFX progression, I think kind of looked better in the original one. Like, it was creepier.
Oh, yeah, well, it's practical, isn't it?
Yeah.
You see, like, a weird, like, bird baby coming out, and it's struggling to breathe. An eyeball. Oh, it's, I
think this is going to be a theme that I didn't expect this going into both these, but I do actually think I prefer the adult side of it in the miniseries.
Same. And I never thought I'd say that.
The final confrontation, but we'll get to that.
We will get to that.
In a bit.
Yeah.
They did have the kids in the 2019 one to do flashbacks.
Yeah.
But they had to digitally de-age them because there was obviously 2 years between filming. Even just look at Finn Wolfhard, like, in 2019, and he's noticeably older.
Yeah.
And I think if they filmed them back to back, they could have just filmed additional scenes with them then, and probably would have included, have it be told as a flashback. They include scenes with the kids that just don't make... Like, it shows them with making a treehouse, or like Ben's made like an underground... So I guess it's not a treehouse, really. It's like a den.
It's like a den, yeah.
That apparently is like really significant to these adult characters when they go back to it. But we have to see in the flashbacks, like, this was not in 2017.
I have a few issues with that scene in particular.
Yeah.
So, the nature of the fact that we are now seeing flashbacks of scenes that we did not see in the first film. So there's no attachment necessarily to that place.
They did reuse a scene that wasn't used in the original one, which I quite like.
Oh, yeah.
The burning,
Occasionally you can tell they are just using deleted scenes from the first film. You can tell in the because they have to de-age the kids when they did more scenes in 2019.
Their faces look very shiny.
But sometimes they introduce just old footage that didn't make it into the final cut of 2017.
And that works.
That works is fine. The de-aging is weird.
Yeah.
It's so noticeable. Finn Wolfhard, I guess he was one that must have aged quite quickly because he barely opens his mouth in the 2019 one.
Yeah.
It almost looks like he's had a lot of Botox, but again, like, I guess that's just the effect that they needed to do. So he can't really show a lot of expression. Jack Dylan Grazer, who's Eddie, way too manic in the 2019 one in the flashbacks, like talking a mile a minute. And the dialogue isn't synchronized properly.
Yeah, it doesn't fit the new mouths that they've...
The new mouths, it's just so noticeable.
Yeah. I feel like if they had a secret den that they all went to, we would have seen it in 2017.
We should have seen it in 2017. I think it's in the book, but it's, again...
I think this is, again, why I've got such a disconnect between the adult characters and the kids ones. Yeah, alright, so we see they're in this den, then we see flashbacks of them as kids. But again, it's in an area that's brand new to us.
Yeah.
And it just doesn't work.
Yeah. You know what I think, again, is a strength of the miniseries? We see a lot of scenes of the adults together, working together.
In the book, they do have to go off on their own.
They do, and they do in the miniseries.
And they do in the miniseries, but there's a prolonged scenes of characters on their own.
In 2019. So this is where, right, so it's kind of changed up a little bit, because the ritual of chud.
Chud or chud?
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 Chud.
Chud. I don't know. The ritual.
Yeah. So Maturin tells them about it.
So yeah, in the book, it is a psychic...
Cosmic turtle.
The cosmic turtle...
Go back to the first video, because I'm not going over that again.
The cosmic turtle that vomited up the universe. Do you remember him? Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, the ritual is a psychic battle of wits between opponents, and one has to, outdo the other, obviously, in order to win, and that's the only way they can battle Pennywise. So that's how it is in the book. I don't think in the miniseries the ritual is ever really...
It's not involved at all.
It's not involved
at all. They basically try to
all.
defeat him the same way they did the first time.
Just to physically confront him, the power of belief.
But in the 2019 one, they make it a Native American...
They make it a Native American thing, which it's not in... it's not in the book.
Yeah.
They do use a Native American ritual in the book at some point to... They do like a smoke ceremony.
Mushroom stuff so they can have a vision quest.
So they have a vision, and that's where they realise that it was, a cosmic thing that crash landed into Earth. But they changed it up a bit. So the ritual now involves the losers having to go and retrieve tokens from their past in order to try and defeat it in the final confrontation. So yeah, we get a prolonged sequence of them all going off on their own, revisiting their youth.
Yeah. Flashback to, again, the scenes that
we didn't see.
We didn't see. And, because I know they hint that, one thing with the adults, like, I know there are stellar cast. I said in the previous one, I love James McAvoy as Bill. I think he's fantastic.
He's a good
Bill
choice.
Hader is Richie. I think he's really good.
That's Finn Wolfhard's choice as well.
Yeah. They make Richie gay in this one.
They do.
Which I think actually really works for his character.
Yeah.
But what holds it back is there's no evidence of that in 2017.
There's no
evidence of that at all. That feels like something that came later. Maybe it's something that Bill Hader suggested.
Could have been.
But it's for something that I think would have overall worked. It really doesn't have that much of an impact.
It doesn't
in this because
it's so absent in the 2017 one.
Like with that, the den, there's now not only is there a disconnect between the adults in one film and the kids, but between the kids and the kids between the two films too. They feel like completely different characters.
They really, really do, and we get a lot of the flashbacks of these kids. Like we see some of them are actually not too bad. So we see Bill crying at the storm drain where Georgie was taken, and Jaden Lieberer, I think that's his surname, brilliant actor that he is. Like he just he's pounding on the tarmac, like why him? That's a great scene. We then we see Ben though back at school being harassed by Beverly and Pennywise, where he hides himself in the locker.
Any scene where Pennywise is in is fantastic, but we see less of Pennywise in this one.
Kiss me, fat boy.
Kiss me, fat boy. That scene in the 1990 miniseries is so much better.
Absolutely brilliant.
So much better.
Kiss me, fat boy. And we see Eddie seeing his mum strapped in the pharmacy on a gurney, being infected by the leper. We see Beverly being yelled at by her dad, which is also a weird scene because apparently in that scene implies that he hates her because she reminds him of their mum.
Yeah, but that's not what I got from 2017.
No, 2017, it's much more of a sexual assault kind of vibe.
A scene that kind of like is the blaring problem I have with this is it's less scary.
Yeah.
And it's when Beverly goes back to her old home and she mistakes Marsh for Kirsch.
Yeah.
You see Mrs. Kirsch, obviously it's Pennywise playing tricks, and it's an old lady that lives there. In this, they make it so she goes to find her token there, which is the poem. I do really like in this one how Ben has kept the page from his yearbook in his wallet the entire time. But it doesn't make sense as to why you would forget.
I'd like to revisit that because
Yeah. So we get this whole sequence with Mrs. Kirsch, who is obviously Pennywise manipulated. And it starts off really good. It's like creepy. It's like, obviously, she's a very nice old lady, but it's a little bit odd. We see stuff going on in the background, like doing the weird movement. And that's really good. But then we get big CG witch.
Big CG giant witch, like zooming into
and it's like,
Jessica Chastain.
I was into I'm involved, I'm into this. I've lost it.
Yeah.
The miniseries, I think, did it really well, even just with makeup.
Yeah.
What saves the scene in 2019 is we then see Pennywise almost as a man putting his makeup on, talking directly to Beverly, and that is fantastic.
That's cool.
So it's like really good opening the scene, nose dives off and then saves itself.
But
it's like it's that bit in the middle, and it keeps doing that. Even when they bring back the leopard, I'm just not afraid of any of this stuff.
I think we mentioned it when we rewatched it. The flashbacks feel like filler scenes.
Yeah.
They don't add anything to the story.
This film is over half an hour longer than 2017.
Yeah.
And it feels it.
I mean, you said it as well. It's nice seeing the kids again, but I mean, these flashbacks, they're literally just padding out the runtime is what it feels like. It's, we know that Eddie is a hypochondriac. We don't need to see him interact with the leper again.
Yeah.
Necessarily.
It almost feels like stuff for people who haven't watched the first part.
Yeah, just to get a taste of what the kids were like. I mean, yeah, in the 1990 series, this scene is the equivalent of when the losers kind of traverse their old haunts to try and get their memories back. For some reason, it works better in that series, and I think it's just because it's not time being wasted. We don't get kids flashbacks in that. It's just the adults kind of going through it. Because
they've already had all the flashbacks in the first part with them. We'd established who these characters are. This film, basically, they're almost like brand new characters.
Yeah.
I do like how violent Pennywise is in this.
Yes.
Like, I really like the scene with the little girl under the bleachers at the baseball game.
Yeah.
When she points out the things like, you're not funny, you're not a clown, you're scary.
Yeah.
And that Bill Skarsgård is so good in that scene.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's horrifying. And then obviously he lures Bill to the carnival. Because he wants to kill the kid who lives in Bill's old house.
Yep.
And they're seen in the House of Mirrors, the House of Glass, and
yeah.
That is also really, really good.
Yeah.
So the 2019 has some really good stuff in it. I just think overall it's too long.
I think that, look...
The pacing's all over the place and the comedy's all over the place.
Any part 2 of this story is going to have... So it faces immediate problems. It's like, you've got mind-bending rituals, you've got cosmological shit going on. It's shit. Just random shit. It's like we said in the first video, it's hard to get your head around. Like, trying to adapt that into a story is tricky. On top of that, you've also got Henry Bowers coming back into the mix, which is difficult in both adaptations. I think both of them kind of struggle to shoehorn him in.
Yeah, I
just
think
feels a bit wasted.
Did it a bit better.
Yeah,
I like seeing
but he's just not
the zombie version of his friend. Who
died. I love Patrick Hockstetter driving the car. I love that scene, zombified Patrick. But otherwise, he's just not much of a threat. It's like Henry's ultimately easily defeated.
Yeah,
in both adaptations. But then, there's we also get, obviously we're leading to the final showdown.
Both have problems.
Both do.
The 90s series is deep. The problem is limitations and how they portray. We can't comprehend, or the characters, I say we as if it's real, can't comprehend Pennywise's true form. So you see it as a giant spider.
Yeah.
The design of it I don't mind. The stop motion's okay, but the effects, it's a bit...
I actually don't mind the look of the spider.
So I don't mind the look of it. It's the way it's implemented. They couldn't do it justice. Tommy Lee Wallace said, if we had more time for the VFX, we could have done more. But we did the best. They did the best they could.
Yeah.
And they're going again with the slingshot thing, trying to feel it the same way, but they're struggling because they don't believe as much because they're adults.
Yeah.
This one, his lair is great. It's when they actually get down to the crash side. Cool. The production design is really cool. And he turns into a giant clown spider.
I don't think it works.
It looks cool, but it doesn't work.
It doesn't work. I actually think they should have just made a massive spider.
Yeah.
Get rid of the clown costume.
Entirely.
I understand by making him still look like Pennywise, you're adding that bit of personal element to it.
In the behind the scenes, that's a massive set.
It is.
As well, which looks really cool. And you got Bill Skarsgård not in costume, just feeding lines to people because it's all CG at that point.
Yeah. I just personally don't think it works very well. And I think Pancake Head Pennywise
they defeat him
works
by
even less
making
for
him
me.
feel small.
I like the idea of it. I don't have a problem with just when you see him literally turn into a baby and his head is just flat against the rock. That just looks... I'm sorry. I can't take it seriously. It doesn't work for me personally.
Yeah. And it's just, they don't touch on this in 2019 that it is pregnant.
It is female.
It's either female or produces asexually.
Yeah.
Well, I think if it was female, would be.
I think they actually say in the book it is female.
Oh, they actually says it's female. Yeah, because it has an egg sac.
Yeah.
So
that Ben kills.
It kills like
the babies.
Lots of babies if possible. They don't touch on that in the 2019 one.
They do not. No.
There's one scene with Bill Hader when he's shouting at Pennywise and he just opens his mouth and does the dead lights look, and it's like, oh, that's really cool.
I love that, and I love the sound effect that they have.
And it's like their eyes is instantly
gone. Like his limbs are just gone as well. Yeah.
It's like the problem with that scene as well is they're there at final confrontation. They then go off on their little adventures inside the final confrontation to have. There's the bit with Beverly back in the school toilet. Ben.
Oh, I actually don't mind that bit.
Again, like it's cool. He's being buried alive, which I think is a link back to the 1990s one when he's
in the den.
dug the grave. But it's in the den. The scene between the two of them is really good, but the den, it's like, again, you're forcing me to care about something that you've shoehorned in here, which is this den.
Yeah, exactly. I agree with that. Bev back in the cubicle again is a nice little touch. Yeah, she was bullied in the first film and picked on by the other girls. But the two of them, like, again, it's like them coming together to save. They couldn't save themselves; they have to save each other. Your hair is winter fire.
What do you think of Eddie's death in both of these?
I find his death in the first film and in the adapted miniseries cheesy.
He's basically squeezed to death.
He's squeezed to death, but also just a bit leading up to it, where he's got his inhaler again, and there's this fucking line of, "I believe in Santa Claus, I believe in the Tooth Fairy, but I don't believe in you." I can't take that seriously either.
I really like the guy who plays him in 2019.
I actually like the guy that plays him in 1990 as well.
I like them both, but I think 2019 his death is a bit more. I think. Yeah. It has a bit more of an impact.
It's more gory as well, because in the book his arm is actually ripped off. Yeah. Similar to Georgie, his arm is bitten off.
There's a theme of because there's other people we don't see die that are in the book who lose arms as well. Yeah, yeah. I think his death is better in the 2019 one. Yeah. And obviously it allows Bill Hader to show a lot of that emotion. I think Bill Hader is a standout. Bill Hader.
I think
Skarsgård and James McAvoy for me are like the standouts.
I think the acting is good. Again, I don't necessarily have an issue with any of them. You mentioned there's a bit of a chemistry problem when all of them are together.
Yeah, they just don't feel like childhood friends that came together and suddenly remembered everything. No. The 1990s did that much better. What was the budget for the chapter 2?
Chapter 2... Oh, sorry, hang on. So, budget was 79 million, so it was higher. Yeah,
most of that was probably just hiring adult actors.
Jessica Chastain, yeah.
James McAvoy, not cheap actors.
Box office was 473.1 million.
So, considering the marketing budget for that would have been like 100 million plus, maybe even more. Usually, like, they say either have 100 million or double your budget for your... I remember the marketing for this film. Oh, so it's made some money, but nothing compared to the first one.
No, it didn't.
Which that was insanely well.
Part 1, it's a tight coming of age drama. It's set in the 80s. It has nostalgia. It has brilliant kid performances. Part 2, again, you're dealing with the adults. You're dealing with cosmological shit. Yeah. It's a tough sell.
It's a problem I have in the second part. If I was to pick between the two, I enjoy the miniseries more, but I'm also less interested. And it's problems like they said, the cosmological shit in the book. It's hard to adapt. And there's obviously neither adaptations. There's the child orgy. They just do a blood.
Outright ignore that.
We're not dealing with any of that. The second half of the book, I think, is actually impossible to adapt.
I don't think you can do it.
I think it is absolutely impossible.
It's more sci-fi than anything.
It is, really. Yeah, it is sci-fi.
A big problem also 2019 is tone. Part 1 did the comedy, the horror perfectly. Perfect blend. I don't know what went wrong in Part 2. The comedy feels forced, and I think it probably is a mix of the adult actors trying to mimic the kids. Yeah. And it just comes across as too much and too forced, and it just doesn't work. Especially when we're in the sewer system at the very end, and you've got Bill Hader and James Ransone as Richie and Eddie, like, who's a good doggy? Who's a good dog? Like the Pomeranian. It's like, would you really be acting that way in this situation?
Really
doesn't work for me.
So yeah, you wanted to make a couple of points on memory.
Yeah, because it's a bit weird, I think. It's weirdly established in chapter 2 of 2019. So the gist is, in the book, And in the miniseries, as soon as the losers and anyone kind of leaves Derry that's been directly impacted by it, you forget. You begin to forget. I feel like it's a bit of a slow process, but inevitably memories just fade away and you can't remember the events.
But I feel like it's not just if you leave Derry, it's something that's over the town as a whole.
It is.
I think the only reason Mike can remember as much as what he does is because he's actively involved in keeping an eye out, because parents do seem to just forget that people go missing.
Yeah. I feel like they call Mike something in the book. It's like the lighthouse keeper or something like that. He made a deliberate choice to stay, and as such, he's the only one that remembers and everything. But he's actively keeping up to date with kids disappearing and whatnot. But so in chapter 2, for the most part, the adults forget, as we can see in the phone calls.
Yeah.
But there are like a few inconsistencies, and one of them is when they're having the Chinese meal, Bev mentions that she has seen one of the film adaptations of Bill's books. She says something like, "Oh, I went to see that in the cinema when it came out." So, did she realise when she went to see the film that it was the Bill Denborough whose screenplay that was?
I do like how they have there's a stand for him in the library for his books.
Yeah, like the local hero kind of thing. But they don't necessarily elaborate on that. It's like maybe Bev just went to see the movie and she didn't clock on it was Bill Denborough, or maybe she did.
Maybe she does know, but doesn't fully know she knows. She know of him, but not.
Maybe.
But it's like you'd think any reference of Derry would instantly bring everything back. Like saying, "Oh, it's Mike Hanlon."
Yeah.
That was enough to do it. So
that was enough.
Oh, Bill Denborough.
Seeing
Or
his
Ben
name,
having the page of his yearbook in his wallet for years.
That's the biggest one.
Not knowing why. It's like it doesn't.
That's the biggest one. So when we meet Ben as an adult, we see clearly in his wallet he has kept the scrapbook page, the yearbook page where Bev signed it with the hearts.
Yeah.
He's kept that for 27 years safe in his wallet. So he has clearly never forgotten Bev.
Yeah. Trust me, as a man, we do not have the same wallet for that long. It will deteriorate.
They
last a long time, but they do. He has moved that from wallet to wallet.
Yeah, he definitely has.
So, and you, when you're looking through your bag or something like that to chuck things out, you check what paper it's.
Yeah.
It's an inconsistency.
It is a bit of an inconsistency.
So you say Bill is written as Stephen King writes Bill as himself, doesn't he? He's the writer. And Stephen King is in chapter 2.
He is? Yeah, he got a little cameo.
He got a little cameo because there's little things like Bill's bike isn't really a thing. It's an issue I have in the second one, because in the first one it's very prevalent. It's used as a way to kind of jog his memory. Hi-O Silver, because his bike's called Silver.
Yeah.
In the miniseries, Ben gets it for him so he can fix it up.
Yeah.
In the 2019, he finds it in a pawn shop and buys it off Stephen King, and it then becomes a big part of him, but it's not a big part of him we see him riding a bike.
We see all the kids on bikes.
Seeing James Blackwell Hi-O Silver, it's like, I know it's in the book, but we don't have any of that in 2017.
I think that is... It's a reference to the book. It's probably more of a reference to the miniseries for anyone who's seen it.
It's more prevalent in the miniseries.
Definitely.
Because
the kid says it a lot.
Yeah, because Pennywise kidnaps Bill's wife.
Audra,
and that doesn't happen in the 2019, which probably, that would have been... It makes it more of a personal one for the group rather than just being a rescue mission for Bill.
Yeah, definitely.
But you pointed out that because it's got the running joke with Bill is that these books are really good, but the endings are always shit. And that's a common thing that people say about Stephen King's books. So that was done knowing that. I really like that.
It's a little in-joke, yeah. People don't like Stephen King's
Stand By Me reference at the very end.
Oh, yeah.
Never clocked on that the first time I watched it.
I don't know how I missed that the first time round. So yeah, at the very end of the story, we see Bill, where they've defeated Pennywise. Bill is back at his desk and he's typing away on his computer. Presumably he's written another story. And there's a moment where we see the page that he's writing, and it's just kind of at a glance, but you can see he's writing about friendship and the value of friendship. And then he's interrupted by a phone call. The whole sequence, for anyone who's seen Stand By Me, you know the ending with Richard Dreyfuss and he's typing, and we get that famous line, I never had any friends later on, like the ones I had when I was 12, Jesus, does anyone? It's such a clear little nod to Stand By Me. It's very similar.
It looks very similar. The outside, the garden looks very similar. It's like...
Yeah. The fact that he's interrupted mid like sentence as well.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, it's
you can
such
see
a
that,
Stand
like
By
you
Me
said,
thing.
like the body or Stand By Me was what eventually led to it.
Yes.
In terms of Stephen King's writing, so maybe that is just because Stephen King was clearly involved in the making of these.
Yes, he was.
So why is he not pushing the turtle and the child?
I honestly, I feel like even Stephen King is like, you know what? Yeah, we've just got it's impossible, isn't it?
It's impossible to adapt.
It actually is, but I mean, potentially with a miniseries, maybe there's a chance that you could. If a miniseries, you can do a book the size of it justice.
Yeah.
I think in a way that you couldn't do in 1990 with just a 2-part series, and you couldn't do in, you know,
just 2 movies
with 2 feature films where people want to see the kids and the comedy and the gore. So I think a miniseries, if you're ever going to do the turtle, if we're ever going to see the Macroverse, TV is probably the medium to do it, but in a longer running series. And yeah, I think and then we get the Stan's suicide as well. That's brought up again, where he sends them all letters.
Yeah. I just think that's really weak.
It is a little bit
again, because we're coming back to a character that we basically don't know.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, it's to bring you all together. It's like, well, I said earlier in the video, it just doesn't work for me at all.
No. Although the guy that plays him looks the spitting image of the kid.
Oh, he really does. But it also feels like it's just padding a very long runtime already.
I feel like that's one of the biggest downfalls of part 2 is it feels like there is a lot of padding.
Like I said in the first video, you could make a supercut of the 2 films that would solve all the pacing issues and put a few events around and make it more flashbacky, and it would just... There's almost a perfect adaptation there, minus the cosmic stuff.
I remember even... I loved part 1, like we've established, but I remember going into chapter 2 thinking, I know I'm not going to enjoy this one as much because it's focused on the adults.
Yeah, and the kids are just more interesting.
The kids are just more interesting, and I do think that was a factor into why part 1 is a lot more popular than part 2. But you know what? Fair play. It is a good adaptation.
Yeah.
It is at its heart. They tried to incorporate a lot of things in a very difficult book to adapt. They had to amend things, like, you know, we said the ritual, they adapted that. But yeah, I do, again, it's shoehorning a lot of stuff in, very short runtime for what they're trying to do, even though it's quite a long runtime in the grand scheme of things. But also just the tone. For me, it kind of doesn't always match up, and it's really noticeable.
I don't dislike It Chapter 2 from 2019. For me, 2017 is just a stronger film. It's more cohesive.
Yes.
Shorter runtime, which it's 2 hours and about 2 hours and 50 minutes. 2017. This one's like 2 hours 47. And it just if you cut out all the pointless flashbacks, it'd be a much more digestible film. Personally, I think the latter half of the miniseries, cheesy as it was, even with the bad effects in the final, I think it deals with the adults better. They feel like friends.
Yeah, there's more of a natural chemistry between
more
the
of a
adults.
natural chemistry.
We see them together a lot more as well.
Although I do like the grandiose of the 2019 that you just couldn't do back.
You couldn't do it. You simply couldn't do it. Budget wouldn't allow it. I don't think the network would have allowed it.
I mean, it's like we saw a lot of like not as much of Pennywise just being. I think Bill Skarsgård had a lot of like just doing the voice work this time because they wanted him to like look more monstrous.
I noticed that too. There's a bit of an absence of Pennywise in chapter 2.
Yeah.
The only other comment,
considering he's the strongest part of the film.
The only other comment I would make there is, considering this clown has waited 27 years for these kids to come back. 27 years. And he even says it, you know, like, I've dreamt of you, I've thought of you, I've craved you, I've missed you. You don't necessarily get that impression throughout the film.
No.
Because he doesn't really make himself known a lot to the adults. Not really.
No.
And he doesn't appear to them as the clown either. It's only really in the final confrontation he appears as the clown when they're all together. So considering how personal this is for Pennywise, I don't get that impression necessarily. It doesn't come across. Oh well.
It's a good film. Anyway.
It is a good film.
Maybe one day we'll get a perfect adaptation with turtles and orgies and all.
Orgies,
we'll never. I don't know if I'd even want it.
I don't think I want to see that. Reading it was bad enough. It was so
reading
bizarre.
it was rough. Was this part during the Stephen King cocaine era?
It wouldn't surprise me. If it's not, then I don't know what the justification is there.
But yeah, thank you for joining us on this adventure.
Very epic.
Epic. They're all worth watching. I know at the time of this recording, Itchaptertwo is on Netflix.
Yeah.
The miniseries is on Prime, free to watch.
Yes.
You'd have to locate 2017. But
Yeah,
that, to me, it's the best out of all of them. That's the one I'm going to rewatch. It's the one I have watched the most.
Yeah, same. I'll continue to rewatch
and when they do the new prequel series, they need Bill Skarsgård to return.
I hope he comes back. I mean, he loved playing this character, so I think it's all kind of boding well.
Yeah.
But we will see. I mean, I would also really recommend the book. As long as it is and as disturbing as it is, it's truly worth it because there are so many elements in the book that probably will never be adapted onto screen.
Yeah, because you can't.
So many other deaths and other characters and, you know, different timelines in the book as well that you can't translate on screen. So it's one hell of a story that is worth checking out.
If you got a couple of months to read that book.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
The doorstop.
It is. But it's a hell of a journey. Yeah.
It really is. So, again, thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks for stopping by. We will see you next week.